Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
Check. What up, world? It's the man with the plan, Bert McGurk, a.k.a. PR, the King of Hearts, and you are now tuned into Clocking Out, the podcast you listen to when you need to get motivated and inspired to doing bigger and better things. What is going on, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Clocking Out. I'm your host, PR, the King of Hearts, and we are here today with Brendan. Brendan, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm great, PR. How you doing?
So far, so good, man. Having a great day. You know, the weather's kind of kicking us over here, but, you know, we're working through it, drinking a lot of water and trying to stay cool in the AC as much as we can.
Yeah, you got to stay hydrated out there in them streets.
Exactly. Hell yeah. So, real quick, before we get into the questions and get to know more about you and your company and what you're working on, please introduce yourself to the people. Give us a little bit of information of who you are and your background of the space and a little bit of your profession, and we'll get going on from there.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, my name is Brendan Hogel, and I am from Jacksonville, Florida, originally. I spent pretty much my entire life in Florida, a little bit in Virginia when I was really young, but that's about it there. I went to college at the University of Florida, spent 5 years in Gainesville, and then I started working at the PGA Tour back in Jacksonville. That's where their headquarters is in Jacksonville. I did that for 5 years, left that job in 2017, and started building my consulting company. I do a business, small and medium-sized business consulting company. So I did that for 2 years. And then in 2019, my now wife, but, girlfriend at the time, we left the country and started traveling. And while we were traveling, I started building websites. So I got involved into e-commerce and drop shipping. And then she was building her company, doing health coaching and that sort of thing. And then just recently, I kind of started this thing on Twitter where I was just reading the Daily Stoic twice a week and having a little space there where we talked about Stoicism. And in doing that on Twitter, I ended up meeting two other guys, Benny and Bryce. And we have now formed a company called Via Stoica, where we are helping spread the teachings of Stoic philosophy and really coach people, almost like a life coaching sort of thing, but with a backbone in philosophy.
I love that. I think that's something, when I was reading through your website and everything like that, that's something I really found intriguing, in the sense that I think that's something that a lot of people talk about, or anytime that conversation's brought up, I feel like that's the topic people tell you, oh, go read this book, go do that. I've never really seen people come together and focus on actually trying to educate people together in a group, or trying to actually create something out of it, which I think is really unique. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background before Via Stoica, before we get in there? Like, what was it that inspired you to start that?
Okay. Yeah. So what happened is I actually, one of the habits I have now that I'm very happy about is reading. I read all the time. But I did not read a book probably at all until I was about 25 or something. But I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And in that book, he talks about this idea of, if you can find a way to make money in the United States or in another European country where the dollar goes very far, where the dollar is very strong, but then live in a country where the dollar goes very far, you can retire early, you can live a very comfortable life and that sort of thing. So I said, okay, I need to figure out how to make US dollars, but then go live in some other country. So that's when I started building the consulting business. That's what got me out of it. My whole life, and even in college, I majored in accounting, but I had a minor in entrepreneurship because I was always going to do my own thing. It was always kind of my goal was to go out on my own and be an entrepreneur. But I just figured I wouldn't really do it until I was in my 30s or 40s and had a decent amount of experience under my belt. But I don't know, just one day at the office, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't waste my time here. It seemed too much of a risk to be in an office for 20 years. Why do that when I can spend those 20 years trying to build something for myself? So that's what I did. I literally quit with no plan whatsoever of what I was going to do afterwards. And then I had family, friends, and some people in the community reaching out to me, knowing I didn't have a job anymore, saying, hey, can you help me with my books? Can you, it was around tax time. So they're like, hey, can you help me with my taxes and this sort of stuff? So that's how I got into the idea of even doing the consulting business, was just people came to me and asked me to help them.
That's actually, and it's weird because a lot of people end up falling into that like that. In that sense, I've noticed that a lot of people in your position are the type of people, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that actually like helping other people. And
Yeah.
then you start noticing that you first start doing it just because it's like the right thing to do and you're in a position that you can do that, and then you start noticing that it turns into something more than that. Not only do you build better bonds with people and you come across like it's like what I've been hearing a lot lately is just break bread with as many people as you can. And then when you're in a
Mhm.
position such as yourself where you're actually willing to give the time and energy to actually help someone in a positive way, whether you at that moment or not, whether you benefited from it in some way, whether it's a business transaction or anything like that, or even if it's just a favor that you're doing, I guarantee you those are things that open doors for other opportunities in the future. And that's what a lot of people don't know, that when you're actually helping a lot of other people carelessly, you start noticing that there's other things, that there's like a gray area that you notice that people aren't paying attention to, and you
Mhm.
put more focus and energy into that, and then you notice that you're not only doing something in a positive way and helping people and spreading some positive information, but you're actually providing something that people really need. So the fact that you actually went out your way to say that you wanted to help people and it led you to be in the position that you're in now, I just think it's like it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people tend to ignore. They tend to just go the route of getting a job, like you mentioned, and then they're
Mhm.
stuck in this job, in this loop. Like, yeah, you're making money, but then slowly you start buying things that you don't need and that you really don't need to depend on. And it just starts going into a thing where you just need to get another job that makes you pay even more. And then you just start getting to a point where then it's like, all right, now you realize you're at a job that you don't like and you hate, but you're so deep in this thing of paying for things that really don't matter, that you're stuck in this position where you feel pressured, like you have to stay there, you can't leave.
Mhm.
So the fact that you actually were able not to get stuck in that and say, you know what, I like, you had your wake up call and your thing of, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do the repetitive 9 to 5 thing where I'm stuck in a place where I don't want to be. And you took that leap. So
Mhm.
what was it like? Did you have anybody that like motivated you in any way that told? Because like I mentioned, like there's a lot of people such
Mhm.
as myself that when it comes to the time, like we all have ideas, but it's that thing of what's going to make us make it day one. What's going to push us to that point of like, all right, let's go and start it today. Did you have a
Yeah.
person that motivated you or pushed you, or was there something that you heard? Like I know a lot of people say like they hear Gary Vaynerchuk speak and it's that one speech that he says and it got them to over it, or it was that one book that they read that got them to be like, you know what, I'm going to start tomorrow. Like, was there a moment that happened or something that really sparked and lit that flame in you to say, you know what, let's take this leap now and let's do it?
Oh man, yeah, and it wasn't something I realized until later. I've never actually told this story on a podcast before, but anyway, so my grandfather was kind of like my father figure. My parents got divorced when I don't remember my parents being married, and then my dad was kind of in and out of my life still to this day. So he's not really around too much. And my grandfather was very much like my father figure growing up. I lived with him from ages like 1 to 5 or 6. And then when he retired, he lived like, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes down the road from me. So I was at his house all the time. Um, and I was working at the tour, I was putting in crazy hours, but I would go, luckily my office was, like I said, 5 minutes down the road from his house. So I would go to his house for lunch all the time and stuff and spend a lot of time with him. And I don't know. I had gone over to his house one day, and he kind of like had this little like magazine that he was reading in the doctor's office that day, and it was the whole magazine was about entrepreneurship and different ways that you could kind of be your own boss, and sort of the different avenues people could take. And he's just like, oh, I picked this up. I know you've always talked about doing this, and I just thought you would like this book or this magazine. Like, well, what are you thinking? Have you been thinking about, when you're going to do this? And so we just kind of had a little chat about it, and that planted the seed a little bit. And I kind of went back to work that day and thought about it some more. And it was like a week later, I said, you know what? And I was actually reading the book Tuesdays with Morrie, which, just for the listeners that don't know what Tuesdays with Morrie is, a student goes back and kind of interviews his old teacher, and he has all the recordings of him speaking, and this older man who's got something where he's dying, just has all these sort of life lessons. And that's what Tuesdays with Morrie is. So I had read that. And so like a week after I spoke to my grandfather, I said, you know what, I'm going to quit my job. I don't need to be here anymore. I'm not learning anything new. And I want to learn more from my grandfather. Like before he leaves, I want to learn from him. I want to record he has all sorts of interesting stories, or had all sorts of interesting stories. But he ended up passing away. I told him I was going to, leave my job at the end of the year, and he ended up passing away like, a few weeks later. Very unexpected. I mean, he had been sick for years and years, so it wasn't like completely unexpected, but, so I would say that conversation with him was what really made it real, in the fact that like, yeah, this is doable. I can do this. And then, I think just this idea of, I had bought a condo, it had gone up in value. So I had some financial stability there, where I was like, hey, I could just sell my condo and I've got money if I can't get a job right away. I had a bonus coming in March. So I was like, I had some things lined up that said, okay, if I'm going to do it, this is a great time to do it. So I just pulled the trigger and left.
I love that, man. I love that. And I love how in the time of you looking for that inspiration, you go to family, because I personally, I don't have that. And I see so many people that mention, oh, your friends and family and this, and it's like, it's hard. Like, it's hard to find people that'll actually support you on what you have a passion for, and not try to, you know what I mean? And it's not that people don't care. I believe that it's hard because sometimes families, what they end up doing is they want you to take the safe route. So like they'll always hear your idea, but then they always be like, yeah, but, and then once you hear that, you already know that they're going to hit you with something that you've heard a million times and that you've thought of a million times. But it's like, you just need that one person to be like, yo, you know what, you can do it, or this is the time, or read this book, or listen to this person, or like, and it's that really gives you that push. And I can just tell that, it's something that means a lot to you, in the sense that you're taking this route, and I'm sorry for your loss. And it's like that moral compass, that you have of like you wanting to do something good, and not only for yourself but for what you said. And it's just that thing in you that it just drives you even more. So it's like, not only do you want to be a good person, but you want to fulfill those promises to yourself also, and know that no one knows us better than ourselves. No one's gonna know. Exactly what you're capable of doing. And now it's to the point that you're actually out there and you're doing it and you're pushing forward through it. But the fact that the reason I'm making this a big deal is that sometimes we don't see how close that motivation or that kick or that fire or that fuel that we need is to home. That's a family member, that could be, and all it is just opening up a little bit and letting them know, like, listen, I have this idea, I have this thought, or I was thinking maybe I could. And you don't know, you never know who's willing to help you or give you that courage or advice. Hey, how's everybody doing? Thank you for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it. What's going on? Sorry about that. So I'm seeing the chat just now show up. So
all good. You got to serve the people. That's what we're here for.
All right. So real quick, I want to what initially drew you to Stoicism, and how has it impacted your life?
Oh, it's been by far one of the greatest things I have ever studied. How I found out about it was I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast again. So he's a common theme throughout my development. But and Ryan Holiday was on the podcast. So Ryan Holiday is kind of the main Stoic author, modern day Stoic author today. So he was on there promoting a book. Heard him talking about Stoicism. And a lot of it made sense to me. A lot of it kind of went in line with, I always, like I said, I looked up to my grandfather as kind of a father figure. And he had somewhat of a moral, virtuous sort of aura about him. And Stoicism kind of matched up with that as well. So that I saw those similarities. And that's really where I started kind of diving into it and listening to the Daily Stoic podcast, reading the Daily Stoic. But it wasn't until I was like actually pretty deep into the entrepreneurship game, about a year, maybe, or 6 months to a year after I left my job and started building the consulting company, where I was just going through a tough time. Like the pressure and the stress of having to make every dollar myself was getting to me. I was worried about if this was going to succeed or not. And I don't know, I guess I just needed something to kind of like help ease my mind a little bit. So I started leaning onto Stoicism a little more, started picking up some of the books, reading some of the more ancient texts, like really digging into it. And really considering myself, I would say, more of a practicing Stoic. Before I was more passive. I was just kind of listening to it, but not really doing anything with it. But it wasn't, so I started that journey, traveling abroad, dealing with COVID and the stressors of that. I lived abroad all during COVID. So that was kind of a whole nother thing. But that really was like training, it was training and using Stoicism, using its practices. And I really saw the benefit in it. And then at the beginning of 2023, my mother unexpectedly passed away, and I'm an only child, from my mom. So we were super close. And that was by far and away the most difficult, devastating moment of my entire life. And if it wasn't for Stoicism and my practice of that throughout the last few years, and then starting therapy shortly before my mom passed away, actually, so between therapy and Stoicism, like I had the tools necessary to get through that sort of ordeal. And that's when I really saw like the power in what Stoicism can do, and why Via Stoica made so much sense to me as kind of my next iteration of entrepreneurship is I have to give these things to people. I have to bring this information and these teachings to people, because if I can go through something like losing my mother and not come out of it in complete shit, well, then this is really powerful stuff. And I want to make sure other people have it in their tool belt.
I agree with you, man. Just listening to you, it sounds like a superpower or something like that you came across from the way that you put it, man. And it's crazy because, again, it's like you're mentioning losing another loved one, and again, it's you're not letting it stop you. You're still looking at the positive side of things, in the sense that this is something that's helping you get through that or work through that and find a way. And it's just crazy because every time I'm hearing you speak, you're saying a lot of stuff about what you experienced, but instead of being like, oh, woe is me and what am I going to do, you're literally keep mentioning there's someone else out there that's going through this. There's someone else that could use the help. There's someone else that I can help with this. And that's the thing, like, you're really careless and selfless with it. And that's what I really, really like about everything that you're saying. And everything is really deep in the sense that it's connecting with you in a deep way. It's not just something that you're like, you know what, this is a good idea to make money, you know what I mean? And it's literally coming from a genuine place, and it's an experience that others can relate to on a personal level, on a deep level, and you want to help people. And related to that, what I wanted to ask you, what about the other people that you work with on this project? Is there other people that you could say that went through a similar situation such as yourself or experience? Or do you feel, and the reason I'm asking is because, like, what if there's some people that really don't understand Stoicism and they're listening and they feel like the only way they can get a good understanding is to deal with something such as what you've been through with the loss? I want to see, is there other ways that people have been able to relate to what you're trying to aim for in the journey that you're on through another experience that that you can share with us, to give people another idea of something that could probably help them better understand?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, the idea, with that Stoics teach us is that challenges are going to come to us every single day. Annoyances, sometimes they're going to be small annoyances. Sometimes they're going to be huge things like you losing a loved one, but they're going to happen to us every day. So it's more about kind of understanding and accepting that. And then how are we going to, prepare and move forward once those things kind of do come? But yeah, my other business partners, Benny and Bryce, they've had their own share of issues. Benny went through a divorce that was pretty difficult for him. At one point, that Stoicism definitely helped him through that. He had a period of time where he had an injury that made him immobile for a while. So he had to depend on a lot of other people and couldn't really do much for himself. And that's not the kind of person he is. So that was very difficult for him. Bryce has been through some identity theft issues and some things like that. So yeah, I mean, it is something that, and while these are more severe things, like divorce, the death of a parent, these sort of things are like some of the most challenging things you go through in a life. But what Stoicism does is it really kind of distills things down, that even though these challenges are very difficult, as well, you still have these same kind of core components of things, of how you approach things. Stoics are very big on focusing on what we can control and not really spending time on what we can't control. So while, the death of my mother was something that I wish I could have controlled, I accept that I can't. And to try and go back and change something, to what if the constant, what I can catastrophize things. This was one thing that really like helped me with Stoicism, is I can sit there and run through, iterations of, well, what if this, what if that, what if I had said that? Like, I can do that forever. And what Stoicism really teaches us is that's not really worth your time. We have limited time, and you can't change anything about the past. So it's best just to kind of move forward. So I think Stoicism has this ability to help you, whether it's a small pebble of a problem or a big boulder of a problem, it just has a way of, making it easy for you, easier than it would be, let's say it that way, to push it out of the way. So those daily annoyances become nothing to you, because they're just they're little rocks in the boat. You expect that when you're on the ocean. The boat's not going to sit still. It's going to move a little bit. That's part of being on the ocean. Part of going outside and living a life is that sometimes people might annoy you. Sometimes people might say things that you don't like, but that's just part of it. So that stuff goes away. And then the big challenges, the big things that really do need our effort and time, yeah, they can knock me down. Like the death of my mother dying, that knocked me down for a while, but I got up eventually. And I think I got up, and then I don't fall down as easily next time. And these things, it's all about the process. It's all about reflection too. I think Stoics are really big on, while journaling is kind of a hot thing right now, it's been hot in Stoicism for 2,000 years. So I do think it's a very powerful philosophy, in a sense that it forces you kind of to get out of your own head, because sometimes in my head is where I come up with the worst things.
I agree with you. I get caught up in my own head too. I believe that sometimes we could be our own worst enemies, because no one knows us better than us. So whenever there's a time that we get, it's like a rabbit hole. Like, we start by this little thing of like, oh, what if, and maybe, and oh, I couldn't, and then little by little, we just start beating ourselves up, or making all these different excuses or obstacles that probably don't even really exist. But we're just that deep in our heads that we just start creating these scenarios and things just because we want an excuse not to try and take that leap forward, But you mentioned a lot of things that I could relate to too, like the whole situation with your other partners and everything that they've been through. I've been through situations in a relationship where it got me really, like, I have 2 kids, so I co-parent now, and I've dealt, so I understand how that comes, on how all those things can really weigh heavy on a person, and it could affect them in a lot of ways, man. A lot of people think it's just easy, like forget it and let it go, and as well as the whole identity theft thing. I haven't had anything as severe as that, but in the world of crypto, I've been a person that's been victimized in the sense of someone hacking into my wallet and taking all my stuff, and so and it's things like that put a lot of things in perspective for you. Like you're saying, it's not as drastic as losing a loved one, but still those are things that, when you split up with someone, it's almost the same thing, because you have to act like a person that you created memories with and had this time with just doesn't exist anymore, and it doesn't matter, and you don't care, and it's the same with not only just a person, but things that you care about. Like, you have a goal or a dream or a job or a business or something you want to start, and then little by little you get older and you start feeling like you're further and further away from that. And then it's like you said, a lot of people get stuck. If it's not fear, it's just due to the situations and the circumstances. They get stuck in jobs that they really don't like, and instead of them looking at it as, if I'm willing to deal with this that I don't like, imagine if I dealt with this doing something I did like, and finding ways just to move forward and stay positive in that light as well. And what I wanted to ask you next is, can you elaborate a little bit on the Stoic coaching programs you guys offer at Via Stoica?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like I said, I mentioned from in the beginning that Via Stoica did come out of, the Be Stoic spaces, which is what we do on Twitter, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. But really what happened was how the even space came to be is like my wife also reads the Daily Stoic, but she's not as into Stoicism as I am. She's, more of a Stoic diet or something. But I would try and get her to like have conversations with me about, because the Daily Stoic is every day there's a different entry in the book, almost like a daily devotional kind of book. And every day I would ask her like, oh, what'd you think of the entry today? And you want to talk about it? And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it at all. Why don't you go to Twitter and like talk to your friends over there? And I was like, that's a great idea. So I went on Twitter and I was like, hey, anyone want to talk about the Daily Stoic? And got people in a room and started doing it. And then as the rooms kept growing and growing, I was like, okay, this is something that people really are interested in. This is something they really need. They want to hear. And that's when we started to make it more of a show and an actual brand and that sort of thing. But then as people started coming up on stage and sharing and being vulnerable, we started to realize like there's a lot of people hurting out there. There's a lot of people that need help. And it was actually Benny that started doing it first. He had a website at the time under his brand, the Stoic Padawan, which no longer exists anymore. But he had that website. So he just put up a page and was just like Stoic coaching, just kind of put it there and then people started buying. So we were like, okay, this is obviously something people want. This is something people need. So let's figure out how to do it. And then we both went and got like certified in a couple different coaching, certifications, and then CBT. So Stoicism is actually the basis for cognitive behavioral therapy, which is kind of the main version of therapy that you would use nowadays. If you go to a therapist to get through trauma or something like that, a lot of times they will use what's called CBT. And the founder of CBT was like, yeah, this is Stoicism. So we just started doing that, and we're getting a lot of great feedback. I mean, we even just we do a month-long package. That's kind of like the minimum we think that has worked, because that's where we see the most change in people. But I mean, after a month, it's like we're talking to two totally different people. And that's just through 4 hours of conversation with us.
I totally agree with you, man, in the sense that it's just something the more and more I hear everything that you're saying and the more that you're explaining things, I'm starting to realize that, yeah, this is something. It's like I've been to a therapist, I've been to a psychiatrist, I've dealt with all that. So it's like the more you talk about things, it's like the more I'm starting to see the connection and I better understand stuff. But it's like you're saying, I feel like it's just talking to people. You get what I'm saying? And really getting to like what it is that's going on, what's going on in their mind, what they've been through, and actually giving them that space to actually know that there's a place that people cannot, that people aren't going to judge, and they're going to understand, and they can relate, and they're actually looking to help. And I think a lot of people should know that places like that exist. It's like I mentioned, it's really rare to hear about that people are taking this route and they're actually trying to help people that are in these situations, and they're letting not only just help them, but educate them and letting them know that there's other things out there that they can rely on and depend on, and to help them get through things, and that there's a lot more people than we think can understand and relate. What I wanted to ask you next regarding to Via Stoica was, being that I'm mentioning all these things and talking to people, how have you guys been able to foster a community of like-minded individuals in your space?
Yeah, so that is where it really, the community is the core of this whole thing. Like, if it wasn't for the community, we wouldn't be here. That's the point. Like, why we do the spaces 3 days a week is so the community can listen to them. Why we have coaching is so the community can come to us when they need help. Why do we do workshops? So that the community can get together and be together in community, which is a big part of Stoicism. The idea behind Stoicism is it really is like, hey, we need to be the best versions of ourselves so that we can be the best for the community, for the whole. Because like at the end of the day, we're all part of this world, this big system together, and we all play a role in it. I'm sorry, what was the question one more time?
How can you guys, or what are you guys doing to help foster a community of like-minded individuals with you guys at Via Stoica?
Yeah. Okay. So the community kind of came together, like I said, by accident. It really just sort of happened. But what we've been trying to do more recently, and to kind of encourage this community aspect is because before it was always about people coming to listen to us, and they weren't necessarily interacting with each other. So we've tried to really encourage that. We have the community on X and we try and keep that updated and things like that, and people interacting in there a little bit. We're trying to build out basically what would be like a community platform on our website. That's something that'll be coming later, but that is sort of the idea of it. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, being available for the community, which is, at this point with the community the size that it is, it's very easy, right? Reply to people's DMs, mention them in comments, like shout them out during the space. But as far as like the like-minded part, like that happened by accident. Like that happened because community members share it with other people. They share it with their colleagues, they share it with their friends or whatever, and they come in, oh, hey, you like this idea too. Well, I heard these guys talking about it. You should go check them out. So it's really just about, I guess, repeatedly stating what we're about and why we believe the things that we believe. So we make it a point on all of our episodes to, like, we're here to be in community with one another. That is the point. If you're struggling, reach out, talk to us, DM us, let us know. So I think it's really just about the repetitiveness and the consistency of and reminding people that this isn't about the money. Because, right, a lot of the things on X are, if they don't start out, money centered, they become it eventually. They're monetized in some way. So we just try to repeat that over and over. We are not trying to monetize this. We will always be producing a podcast for free. We will always be doing spaces for free. We will always be giving away free coaching as needed. If we know someone's struggling and they can't afford it, we're going to give it to them for free, because that's what community does. That's what you do when you care about people. So how do we foster a community of like-minded individuals? Care. We care about people, and we do it hard. So I'm just like, that is what we do. We care about people, and that's all you have to do. It's like, I don't know. It's not that hard. Just care.
I love
give
that.
a shit about people.
I love it, and you can hear it in your voice and everything like that. That it's something that's really coming genuinely from a place in your heart, and I love that. And everything that you're saying, and the way you present yourself, and everything that you're speaking, sharing, it goes to show that you're putting other people first. And just so you know,
Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that.
There's a lot of people in the chat. I just want you to know right now, we've been streaming for about 32 minutes. We got 9 people watching on X. We got 5 on Twitch. We got 2 on YouTube. And we already have Nacho here and a couple of other people. Also, Brett as well, if I'm not mistaken, said that they're already following you on Twitter. I also put the link in the chat. So if anyone's interested, for whatever reason, it's not letting me put the link on the YouTube chat. But for anyone who's interested on Twitch, click the link that I put up and give Brendan a follow, and go check out Via Stoica. The link is also, I'll try to get the link as well on here. Hi. Yes, we have Miss Ellie who's saying hi to both of us.
Hey, Ellie.
And then hold on, we got Soggy in here, we got Naksho, we got Brett, Megan was in here before. Everybody just kicking it with us in the chat. Thank you so much. And she said that she's following you as well already on Twitter.
Cool.
But yes, the Nacho saying right now we got the Web3 friends up in here. Yes, we do.
Nice.
So to keep things going, I wanted to ask you next, besides for checking out Via Stoica and checking out your spaces and your podcast and everything, what are some other things that you can recommend people for some good? Because right now, it's like you mentioned, there's a lot of places online that go from having one point of view and then automatically going to just give us your money. And what are some things that you could suggest, besides, of course, going to check you guys out and what you're doing, that you could recommend people to, like resources for them to start to get better understanding and learn a bit more about what Stoicism is and how they can practice it, or at least start taking the beginning steps on how to take that route?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I do think, I'm still going to start where I started, which was at Ryan Holiday. He has the Daily Stoic podcast. He's been doing it for a very long time. He also does an email, if that's something that you're more interested in, versus a podcast. So he has a couple different options that start to give you kind of just the basic overview. I also really love giving the book, The Daily Stoic, to people, because it's such a simple, it's one quote a day, and then a little just like explanation of what the quote is, how you can apply it in your life. So it starts to give you that. And then each month has a theme. So like for 1 month, you'll just focus on one theme of like action. So like taking action, and that's what you'll, kind of learn about for 30 days. So I think the book's very well organized. It's not that expensive. It goes on sale all the time. And I just think it does a really good job at making it digestible and approachable. Because that's the problem with philosophy. Some people, I think, get a little scared because it is ancient. Sometimes the texts are weird. It's nice to have kind of a modern day translation of it. And that's what Ryan Holiday does really well. And then as far as like books, there's the Guide to the Good Life by William Irvine is a good one. And How to Be Stoic by Massimo Pegliucci is another good one. But, I'm always just a big fan of YouTube. I like YouTube University more than any other university on earth. And the problem with Stoicism, though, is there is essentially like two versions of Stoicism out there. There's the proper version. And then there's like what is affectionately referred to as broism, which is very much like Stoicism that's been, I don't know, manipulated by Andrew Tate and those guys of the like that are, very much like the alpha male kind of thing. So a lot of the stuff on YouTube does kind of fall under that, so that's where it gets a little difficult. But yeah, I mean, it's really just about picking up the books. I think that's been the easiest thing for me. It took me so long to actually pick up like the ancient text, so Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the most famous of the kind of ancient Stoic writings. It's Marcus Aurelius, who at the time was the emperor of Rome, and it's his personal journal. Like he's just journaling to himself. And now it's one of the most publicized books in the world. But anyway, that book is absolutely great. Like it's very easy to understand. It's very easy to digest. You can literally open the page at any point and just pick. There's not like there's no order to it or anything. You can read it completely out of order. So I find myself just picking up that book all the time and kind of poking around. But that's the one I would recommend the most is Meditations.
And as far as like besides just getting the information, what would you say are some ways that people can practice the principles of Stoicism and apply them to different aspects of their life, such as like their career, their relationship, and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So the first thing is, like I said, I mentioned before, is, kind of step one is, can I control this or can I not? So if you're upset by something, if you're bothered by something, figure out the things within that event or scenario or whatever that you have influence over, that you can control, versus things that you can't, right? So for example, what we can control comes down to three very small things: our thoughts, our opinions, our actions. So the actions, opinions, thoughts of others, we can't do anything with that. And that's probably the biggest unlock, is like, once we can get over that, that's probably a big step. So I think trying to differentiate between what you can control and what you can't is a good place to start. And then once certain events upset you, maybe a particular person at work upsets you or annoys you, or, driving to work pisses you off, and that, then the Stoics do something called negative visualization, which is this idea of basically imagining yourself doing the thing that you don't like. And then what's going to happen to you? How's that going to make you feel? How are you going to respond? Right? So like in the case of someone at work that's annoying, and maybe they say underhanded comments to you that upset you. Well, practice feeling that way for a second. See how that feels in your body. And then how do you want to respond to that person? And we know in our logical brains, responding in a equally snarky, mean way is just going to cause more problems. So we don't want to do that. We want to respond calm and with rational thought, and maybe call attention to the fact that they're maybe being a little bit of a jerk. So I just think that this idea of kind of walking through the scenarios that we're worried about, the things that give us fear or anxiety, walking through them in our heads before we have to actually do the thing, can help those, scary things not seem so scary sometimes. So I think those are two kind of easier tools to use kind of right out the gate.
And what would you say to someone who's a little skeptical about the relevance of Stoicism today, like in the world? Because it's like you said, like there's a lot of people they'll fake the funk and they'll act like they either want to help or they act like they care, and sometimes they're just listening to try and see. I believe sometimes people try and see where your weak points are to try to take advantage of you, especially nowadays. It happens a lot, whether it's in person and someone you know or whether it's online. um what would you say are some things that people, or what would you say for the people that have had that experience when they've tried that and now they're a little skeptical about it?
Well, like skeptical about, so with Stoicism, it is, I understand, like, that's the point. So like with philosophy, you have this idea of these kind of ivory tower philosophers, like when you Socrates, Aristotle, kind of the original philosophers. There's like this understanding that they just sat around and like debated questions that didn't really matter. But the difference with Stoicism, and it's interesting, a lot of the philosophies around the time are usually named after the founder. Like Epicureans was founded by Epicurus. So, but with the Stoics, they're named after what's called the Stoa, which was literally just like a porch. And that porch was where they would go meet and chit chat and have their little conversations. And so the Stoicism is a philosophy for the streets. It's a philosophy that is born out of action, and not these like sort of big questions of why are we here and what is the meaning of life. Like that doesn't help us day to day. That doesn't help us in the trenches. What helps us in the trenches is how do we get over anxiety? How do we quell anger and maybe not allow anger to control us so much? And you can see that this stuff works, I think, because it's been used by leaders throughout the last 2,000 years of human existence. Presidents, foreign leaders, ancient leaders, military leaders, all sorts of people in leadership positions lean on Stoicism as a way to guide them. And finally, I'll just say that everyone out there, everyone listening, you and I, everyone has a philosophy of life, a way that they make decisions, a way that they choose how they're going to do one thing over the other thing. I just think that a lot of people, without realizing it, have a philosophy of life that's based in a lot of other people's opinions and based in a lot of what other people think. And what Stoicism does is it turns everything internally. You are responsible for everything that happens to you. So why do you care what other people think? It's you that you have to, report back to, so to speak. So I think it does this thing where you actually start to build your own framework. And we've seen it recently as Stoicism, interest in Stoicism has started to kind of have a resurgence. I believe that is because our traditional systems of what we used to depend on for guidance, the government, education systems, the media, pretty much any institution, large amounts of people now have distrust in for whatever reason. And when you start distrusting your institutions like that, well, where else are you going to go but internally to figure out how to make decisions and and where to move forward and how you're going to act in the world? You got to go here and figure it out for yourself. So we've all got a philosophy of life that we're following. I choose Stoicism. So others can choose anything else, but you've got something. So I would at least do an inventory. If you're skeptical of following Stoicism, that's fine. My job is not to turn people into Stoics. My job is to give out these tools and let people use them if they want. But you've got a philosophy that you're following. So doing that inventory of who are your influences, who do you think? Is it your parents? Is it people online? Is it your friends? Like, you're following someone. It's just a matter of what is it.
True, I agree with you. I think a lot of us try to look for those people, whether it's people that we relate to or people that we inspire to be or that we think are, we put them on a pedestal basically, and then we start feeling like, oh, that's the life that I want, or that's the type of person I want to be. And it's not until they actually start living like that person does that they start really realizing that maybe this isn't what I want, or it just goes against themselves, and deep down inside they know that they're meant for something better, or to be in a place more suited for them where it'll bring out the best in them and have them happy and in a good mood and more creative or productive or whatever it is. But I agree with you though. I do think that that's a major part of it as well, of people taking that inventory and really looking within and finding out, because it's like you're saying, like, you're just here to help. You're not here to convert anybody into anything or change anybody's point of view or nothing. And what I wanted to ask you next is, what are some of the biggest challenges you face while building Via Stoica, and how did you overcome them?
Ooh, that's a great question. So for me personally, and this won't apply to the other guys, but my previous business was a consulting business. So I have my consulting business, and that's probably my main source of income. That's how I really make money. And I have some websites, but they sometimes do well, sometimes don't. And then now I've got the Via Stoica company, and there's a big difference between consulting and coaching. And I did not know that when I started Via Stoica. Consulting is very much people bringing you in to say, tell me what to do. I don't know how to do this business thing. Help me. So it's very much me just telling people what to do, and not, whereas with coaching, it's very much you're walking alongside of someone while they're going through something. So it's more about asking them questions and letting them kind of guide the conversation. Whereas a consultant, like, I'm the one in charge, and here's the plan. I'm going to lay it out for you, and then we're going to go do it. Whereas in coaching, I have to kind of let the client lead me where they want to go, show me the areas in their life that we need to talk about and we maybe need to work on. So that's where I've had to do a lot of self-reflection and growth in myself, is how to tweak my skill set from consulting to coaching. Because, just like the same way that, therapy is obviously different than being like a medical doctor. Like, you just do things a little differently, but they both help people feel good. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me personally, was just making that transition from, instead of instructing people on what to do, more so walking with them as a support system.
No, that's good. I like that you said that. I feel like a lot of people feel it's the other way around. So the fact that you had that experience and that you're actually willing to share that, a lot of people won't, and I think that that's important. A lot of people need to understand that they need to. It's not always just, oh, I'm in charge, I gotta lead. It's what I say. I gotta, sometimes you gotta open it up and look at it from different points of views and different perspective, and also be willing to put yourself in a position to admit, like, all right, maybe I don't know what's going on, or maybe I need to listen to other people and try it in a different way, or come at it from different angles, because you never know. But it's one of those things, like, you didn't know until you got to that point and you had the firsthand experience, and that's what you learn from. And I think that that's the best way to go about it, because if not, we just keep thinking about the scenario in our head in different combinations, and we never get anywhere with it because we didn't actually put it into practice. So it's like all the different things that we think about can go good or bad or whatever, but we're really not going to know until we actually try and put that forward and actually try to move in that direction of doing something to make whatever we're thinking about come to life, and practice and learn from experience.
It's been the biggest thing for me. Is like, it's so interesting to me that there's so many people that have come to coaching sessions, and then right out the gate they're like, well, you're not just going to give me like a list of things to do. Like, they think it's almost like if you went to like a personal trainer and they're like, all right, here's your workout plan, here's your meal plan, go. And I was like, no, this is not what coaching is. Like, coaching is very much like, it's asking questions. It's just a lot of questions asking, and then reframing. People might have, because a lot of times what comes down to the struggles in our own lives is it really just us not seeing the situation for what it might be. Like, we have an idea of, oh, the situation is this, and that's the way it is. And then a friend comes along and they might be like, well, what about this option? And that changes your perspective and gives you a whole new angle on the situation. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And that's what a coach is really like it's just a friend that you trust, that you want to have a conversation with, and they can see things from different perspectives. So yeah, a lot of people come in expecting like essentially a, Stoicism meal plan or something, and I don't give them that.
Yeah, no,
So I'm glad you brought that up.
I hear you on that. What I wanted to ask you next, what advice would you give someone who is thinking about leaving their job to pursue their passion, such as you did?
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, obviously the biggest thing, when people talk about it, where they say, pursue your passions, and this and that. And that is true. That's important. But what I like to remind people is that there can be steps and there can be levels to this. So my background is in accounting. I did accounting because I was good at it, not because I liked it. I don't like accounting. I don't like doing numbers. I just am good at it. They make sense to me. And I knew it was a career that I could make money in right out the gate, and I could get a job in right out the gate. So that's what I did. And then I left that job as soon as possible because I didn't like it. But what I started to do was then open myself up to my passions, which at the time, all I really had was like, I just want to help people. I just want to help people live, have an easier life. So, hey, if they have a side hustle or, their main business, maybe I can help them make that thing better. So I think, to answer your question, I would say that the first thing you need to do is get an understanding of your expenses, because dollars and cents do come into this. As much as we like to say, oh, just don't, just chase your passion, that's fine. Like, yes, but also you need to pay the bills. So getting your life as simple as possible, meaning as few expenses as possible, is a good starting point. Or having some sort of like saving up for a certain amount. If you can save, certain 6 months worth of expenses, then save that, then quick. But of course, most people just don't have these options. Like, we are living in situations where life is just difficult, and it's difficult to buy things. Everything's expensive. Rent's getting more expensive. So I would say that if you can figure out a way to stay at the job you don't like, while also starting to build the thing that you do like, that's really the way to do it. And because you want to have both, you want to have obviously an income of some sort to support you and allow food to be on the table and the lights to stay on and all that fun stuff. But also, like, building your passion on the side is really the best way to do it. I had the luxury of, I had bought a condo, it increased in value. So I made some money on that sale. So I had a chunk of money to kind of sit on for a little bit before I had to run out and get a job. But I think about it, even in the point of not having, that sort of situation, there is ways to do it. There is ways to but I do think at the end of the day, you do have to cut some expenses but you can't cut them infinity, right? Like, we can't not have expenses. They exist. So figuring out what that number is, getting a job or something that can support that number, and then dedicating the rest of your time to the passion. And I know that sounds like, oh yeah, if it was that simple, everyone could do it. But it's not simple. Like, it's really hard to keep up that consistently, because that's the other part of the equation I think people forget. There's so much online about like, oh yeah, just get rich in a month and make money on doing this, and you can set it up in a weekend. And like, if it's too good to be true, it is. It's not true. So, nothing worth having comes easy. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort. Like, that's what you're doing here with this podcast, like putting this together, doing all of this, like, you're putting in the reps. And that's how you build something worth having. That's how you build something of value. You don't do it over the weekend. You don't do it for 1 hour a night, sometimes on a Thursday. Like, you do it when you really care about it. And then all you want to do is, and I think one thing too, to think about it is, I don't really like this concept where people like just shit all over their job all the time. Like, worst job ever. I hate this place. I hate waking up. I hate leaving. I hate going. They're making that experience so much worse for themselves. So I think if you can flip the perspective and try and tell yourself, look, my job is my first investor. It's the first person investing in my company. So let me make sure I keep my first investor happy. Let me make sure I keep them around. So I got to do the minimum work required to keep my first investor here. And then I got to go take that investment and do something with it. And that's where I wish people looked at their job, their 9 to 5, slightly differently.
Bro, that's right now. It's even people in the chat. They're doing like the mind blown emoji and everything. Like, Nacho, shout out to you and you as well for going back to college and doing the artwork for 4 years. But you're such an amazing artist as well. So I just want you to know that too. So whatever it is that you got over there, I'm telling you, is paying off. But you're 100% right, because the reason I'm like really agreeing with you is just recently I started 2 new jobs. They're not horrible, but they're not amazing. All right. Mm-hmm. And through these jobs, being that they're good paying jobs and they have a lot of opportunity for other things, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you gotta go through all the crappy parts of the job before you can get to the good stuff. You got to show what your worth is. A lot of stuff is seniority and a lot of things like that. But every day I get there and every day it's something new. Every day I got to go for a new training class, or I got to go for some testing, or I got to go get certified in something and study some book and do like every day it's something different. And it's not that I have to do it. It's that there's opportunities to get better pay, more hours, and like, a better schedule. And, but those are the requirements. And then every day that I go there, right now, like I get paid a certain amount, but every time that you do the requirements of getting the certifications, you get paid more money, you get more hours, so it's like there's a lot of benefits to it. But at the same time, like I'll be at work and there's days that I can't stand it, and I'm comparing it to my other job or whatever I used to do, and be like, you know what, I did less when I got paid for this and I'm here or whatever. And I used to hate it. I used to make myself hate going to work. And it wasn't until one day, it's exactly what you said, I just started, in my head, I started saying, you know what, this is my side hustle. This isn't even my job. This is just one of my side hustles. And my real job is the podcast. I got to get through all this just so I can go home and do the podcast. Yeah. And in my other job, the same thing too. I'd go to work and I'd be dealing with people that I don't want to be around. And they're messing up my whole flow of things, making me feel like the days drag. And instead, I just started saying, you know what? Thank God I only got to deal with these people for now, because this is just my side job. This is only helping me make the pot. So I started looking at it like that. And then I started saying it out loud. Like anytime that people be like, why are you doing this like this? Or why don't you? I was like, it's not that I don't care. I'm doing my job. I'm doing what I got to do, but I'm not going to argue with anybody about what's right or wrong or nothing. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do. If there's a customer or a client or whatever that comes, I'm not going to argue with them. At the end of the day, I start saying it out. I'm like, this is just my side job. Like, I don't care. Like, I am not this job. This is not me. This is not my career. This is not what I want to be known for. Like, I respect the job and I'm grateful for it. Every day I used to be like, oh my God, I'm going over there. Instead, now I started changing it to, thank God I get to go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
I go to work and I get to have a check right now, because there's people that I see that are struggling, that can't even afford groceries, can't afford their bills. They can't afford this. And it's hot out and they're walking out with their kids because they can't afford to pay for their cars or to get an Uber. And it's like, I've been looking at more in that perspective, which is why I completely agree with you that you're 100% correct. If you just did that little switch of changing your perspective of things, even just the slightest bit, by saying, you know what, this isn't permanent. I know I don't like it here, but I know that this is something that I got to do right now. It's not permanent. This is just a stepping stone. This is just like a lady that I started speaking at my job to. Her name is Jessica. The other day I was all in my head and she came up to me, and randomly, I always stick to myself. She comes up to me. She's like, don't overthink about it. Whatever happened. It's in the past. This is just a bridge. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, this job is just a bridge to get you to where you're really supposed to be. Don't stay on the bridge. And it was weird because like she just randomly came up and told me that, and I've never spoken to her or nothing, but it's like she can see it in my face that I was deep in my mind again. And she came up and she's like, relax. She's like, be here right now. She's like, don't be yesterday or where you are last year or try to think too much in the future. It hasn't happened yet. She's like, but whatever happened, and whatever hasn't happened. But be here, be present, be right here. And then she's like, just remember, you don't have to stay here. She's like, this is just your bridge to get you where you're trying to go. She's like, but don't forget that you're trying to get there. She's like, some people come and they stop for a little bit for some fresh air and they stay here because they get really comfortable, and they forget that wherever they're trying to go is a million times more beautiful than where they are right now. So, just that and everything you're saying, it's like, it's just really hitting home. But you're 100% right. People need to just make that little switch of changing their perspective. It's not only just work. Maybe it could be anything else that they're dealing with in their life. If they can just find the positive in it and just understand that it's not something that they have to permanently deal with for the rest of their life, and that there's ways to work through it. There's ways to get through to the other side, to something bigger and better. I strongly believe in that, and I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because I thought I was going crazy thinking that way myself. No,
absolutely not, man. That's such a cool story. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I mean, so the Stoics have this thing. It's a quote from Marcus Aurelius where it talks about the obstacle is the way. The thing that is like trying to stop us, getting through that is how we continue on the path. So like in this case, it's I gotta work this subpar job for a little bit. That's the obstacle right now. And if I work at this and I stay doing this and I keep consistent with what I'm doing on the side hustle thing, it's going to work. That's the difference between entrepreneurs that succeed and entrepreneurs that don't. They quit. Like, that's it.
100%.
Entrepreneurs that succeed just keep doing it over and over and over and over and over and over
Yeah.
and over again until it works.
100%. 100%. A lot of people don't understand that that's all part of it. Even when you think you figured it out and you got it figured out, you can't even stop because there's other people still trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, or they're trying to get to the same position you're at, and it's like you can't stop. There's someone else that's going to come and try to make a better version of whatever you're doing, or that's going to try to take the spot of what you're trying to be, whether it's something in business, whether it's something in someone's life personally with a loved one. Like, there's always someone trying to go for whatever you're going through or going for, whether it's that they want it also, they need it also, or there's people that are just envious. But at the end of the day, no matter what it is, if you feel deep down in your heart that you're supposed to do something, there shouldn't be anything stopping you, no matter how many times you have to put those steps into practice, no matter how many times you got to try it and you fail, you're going to keep going for it. That's the same with entrepreneurs. That's the same with people who have a passion for something they truly care about, creators, entertainers, artists, business people, whatever it is. But when you have that thing in your heart that you know you have good intentions, you know that you're capable of doing what you're envisioning in your mind, there should be nothing stopping you. There shouldn't be any negative things come. And that's the best thing also. Like, the number one thing you should make sure it doesn't affect you is the outside world. You shouldn't let anyone dictate the way that you're thinking, feeling, or what you can or can't do. Like, you should never let anyone, oh, you think you could do that? Why are you going to take that route? Why are you going to, like, it's a lot of those things that I feel like just slow people down and beat them up to the point where they just give in and they say, you know what, it was a nice idea, but it's just an idea. I'm not going to pursue it. I'm not going to do nothing. And it's not until we see someone else do the same exact thing that we were going to do, and then we're like, you know what, I had that idea first. I did. Okay, so why didn't you do it? Why didn't you follow your gut? Why didn't you believe in yourself and take that route and do that thing, you know? And it's like you're saying, it's just a lot of things of practicing a lot of different versions of just being grateful, of just taking that inventory of what you're really experiencing, in what you know, what you know you need to learn and get better at, and just look at your life. If your life is in a certain way that you know you're not happy with and you're dreading going to work, change the perspective of how you look at work. If you don't like how your life is or how it's making you feel, check what's making you feel bad. You're mad because you're out of weight. Okay, so let's talk about it. Are you exercising enough? Are you watching what you eat? It's those things that people, they say it's dumb or something, like a lot of people, but it's at the same time, those little things are actually necessary steps. You have to take those steps. You have to do the things that you don't want to do. You have to admit that you have a problem either watching your spending or watching your eating, or you have a problem with the people that you keep around you because they're all negative and you're just, oh, you don't want to be alone. So you got to, there's a lot of different things depending on what your situation is, but it's just like you're saying, it doesn't need to be this life-changing thing that happens overnight. It doesn't need to be where you meet someone and you tell them, give me a list of what I'm supposed to do, not do, what I'm supposed to eat, when, what time, how many. It doesn't need to be that complicated. It's as easy as you sitting down the same way that they would talk with you, talk to themselves, and do that self-evaluating of, what am I happy about? What am I not happy about? What can I do to change it right now that I'm in control of? And then understanding what you're not in control of and knowing that, okay, I can't change that yet, or it's something that's out of my control, but I just got to accept it. But at the same time, there's ways around it. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about the message that you have, is like, it's literally just, you're really helping people find hope, and just really not only other people willing to help, but also realizing that they have it within themselves, whether it's them taking those steps or them practicing those things or learning, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, we don't have to feel hopeless. Like, there's something for everyone. You've given us so many different examples of different situations from what you've been through, what your other partners have been through. And it just goes to show that it really doesn't matter what's going on in your life in one way or another. There's people that relate. There's people that have been through it, because you've mentioned two other people. And I myself as well, I've had a death in the family. I can relate to that. Everyone can relate to that. Everyone's been, everyone's dealt with death in some way, shape, or form. Everyone's dealt with a very horrible relationship that's ended badly. Like, it's a lot of things, but all these things, a lot of people don't tend to realize it affects us differently. And those things accumulate, and we all react to it in a different way, depending on what we believe we have access to. A lot of us think we're alone and we have no option but just to be like, you know what, this is life. I just got to adapt to feeling miserable. And that's not the case at all. It's not until we see someone else that's in a similar situation, or someone else that looks like us, or that comes from the same background, or that comes from a maybe a situation that's worse. Like, a lot of us tend to think that we have it bad until we meet someone else who has it worse, and then we start realizing like they're able to look at the bright things of life and deal with things, and me, who has more than them, can't even look at like, why am I having a good day? Like, it shouldn't be that difficult, you know? So the fact that you're actually providing that information and that space and that willingness to listen to people and help them find the core problem of like, why is it that you're feeling this way, and let's try to figure out a way to change that, because you're important and you're cared for, you know, you're valued. It doesn't matter whether you know someone personally or not on that level. It's just the fact that the right thing is the right thing, and no one should go without feeling like their feelings don't matter, or their mindset and how they're thinking of things and they perceive things doesn't matter, or how they're reacting to a certain situation that happened in their life. You know, it's a lot of different things that come into play. And I don't know, like, the more and more that I hear about everything you're saying, like, I'm really actually excited that we had this conversation, because I didn't even know that there were people like this doing this. You know what I mean? Like, that you're actually getting together and you're actually making it a mission. Like, yo, we got to make this louder, and we got to make sure that people understand that, you know, there's help out there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about making the world a better place. And I know that sounds cliche and such, but like, it's because it happens in these interactions, like these little interactions that you and I are having right now, in the little interactions that you have at the grocery store, the, you know, the post office, whatever. Like, how we interact with each other day to day is what makes a society. And recently, I think we've been doing a pretty shitty job at that. And I just wish that we had a different perspective on other people and a different perspective on other people's struggles. That's one thing, like, traveling the world that I've done. I've lived in 20 some odd different countries. And one thing I can tell you is we're all the same. There's not really that big of a difference between the people all the way in Eastern Europe and, you know, the people in South America. There's not that big of a difference. We're all just trying to do the same thing, live a comfortable life, provide for our families, be happy. And that's it. We do it in different ways. We pursue different paths and all that sort of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all the same, man. And we're here for one another. We are made to interact with one another and connect and be in community with one another. That's what human beings are made for.
I totally agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah. I think a lot of us forget that we're all just human. You know, we go to places and we see people working behind the counter, and then we get upset because of one thing, but we forget that that's another person just like we are. They have a life, they have kids, they have a family, they're just working, you know, and then we tend to just let out anger or get frustrated with certain things. And it's simple things like those interactions that if we really just took a second to relax and just like really try to assess the situation and what's going on, and we realize, you know, we don't know what that person's going through. We don't know what they've experienced in life. We don't know why they're there. We don't know why, you know, but at the end of the day, it's like you're saying, if you just take that time to really just try and communicate with people in some way, shape, or form, because we're supposed to talk to each other, whether it's to share thoughts and ideas and just collaborate on certain things or whatever, but we're all supposed to just work together, make things better. And I believe, like, it's like you're saying, a lot of us are doing a shitty job at it. And it's only because of the fact, and I strongly believe it's a lot of things with technology, a lot of things with politics, a lot of things, like, there's more things that are made up that are literally just trying to divide people. And I feel like if everyone just took the second to really ignore all that and pay more attention to the similarities that we have, they'd be a lot more progressive things happening. You know, instead of looking at like, oh, they live over there, we live over here. Okay, how about the fact that you're just both living, period? How, like, let's just look at it like that. You're all flesh and blood. You all bleed the same blood. You're breathing the same air. You need food to eat. You have family and loved ones. How about we focus on those things instead of all the other things that we don't like about each other, and we make it seem like that. Like, no one's perfect, but at the same time, everybody on this planet is trying. Everybody is trying, whether they want to or they don't. It doesn't matter. We're all here and we all have to be with each other. And there's ways that we can live with each other in harmony. There's no reason for us to be so against each other and so against communicating and listening to one another and just knowing what we can do, whether it's today, tomorrow, whatever, in the smallest way, to just spread that positivity to someone else, to spread the good, to understand and let someone know, like, listen, I'm here to listen to you. Maybe I might not have the best advice, but I'll listen to you. I'll let you know that your feelings matter, that what you're going through matters, and that there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But the fact that you're actually sitting here and you're doing coaching and you're just providing people the real space of like, listen, I'm listening to you, I'm here, we're gonna figure this out, like that's my job, I care, like, and that's what I really love about all of this right now. And what I want to ask you next is like, can you share some stoicism that people can use to make like better decisions in a way, or like some things they can practice to help them make better decisions in a way that'll help improve their life in a positive way, practicing stoicism?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I think that everyone should do in general, whether you plan on studying Stoicism or not, doesn't matter, but is have a why, have an understanding about why you're doing what you're doing. And that can be a big picture why, as into like, why am I living? Why am I working? What is my purpose? Like it can be that, or it can be very small. Why am I doing the task that I'm doing? Or why am I pursuing this passion over another passion? Like, so understanding your why, asking yourself why a lot, I think is really helpful just to be clear and have that clarity about the kind of the purpose or the driving force behind what you're doing. So I think that is, the Stoics are really big on why, and the motivating factor behind things. So I think if you can understand that about yourself, that helps you make better decisions. And then along with that is have an understanding of things in your life and their importance. And this can get tough. It can get really hard, especially when you're talking about the most important thing in your life. Who's the most important thing in your life? Who's the second most important person in your life, or thing, or whatever? It's probably going to be people, right? But when you have this understanding of like, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 10, or however many you can do, decisions become easier. Because if it's a decision that's going to impact, just to use my own example, like my wife, most important person in my life, if something's going to negatively impact her, but be a positive for person number 3 on my list, I don't care. It's going to hurt my wife. I'm not doing it. So this is what I'm talking about. Like it helps the decision process just happen easier. So anything you can do to try. And then I also love what I like to call like permanent decisions. So this is what I did with the news. I used to be very politically involved. I read news sites every single day. And then one day I was like, I don't think this is bringing a lot of value to my life. I'm just going to go ahead and not look at the news at all. And now I don't. And then my life is a lot better, I think, without it. So that is a decision I made where I made it one time and now it's gone forever. So when you can start to try and figure out, hey, these little things annoy me, or this little thing might, messes up my headspace, gets me out of whack. Well, how can I eliminate it entirely from my life? Now, I'm not saying you can do that every time. It's hard, but if you can figure out how to do that, that is the play. So I would say, yeah, just getting uncomfortable with your why and knowing what's important to you.
And what would you say from the way that you're looking at things and what your plans are, what is the future for Via Stoica?
Via Stoica is going to be the place where people come to learn from one another. Hopefully, like we very much view this as a lifestyle brand where people are coming here for whatever struggle they're going through in their life. We're going to have someone there that can help. Long term, we're going to be expanding this to hopefully not just be Stoicism. Like that's where we found each other, and that's what works for the 3 of us. But we do have this, we like viewing this sort of Via Stoica thing very much as like the next phase of what Ryan Holiday did. So he brought Stoicism to kind of the forefront. He made it popular again. But what he doesn't do a very good job of is bringing people together, really like having Stoics come together in community to not only solve their own personal problems, but solve the problems in the community, solve the problems in their state, in their country, et cetera. So that is where Via Stoica is going, is we want to be that beacon, that big tent that everyone can come under and join together. And then we find, hey, what do you guys got going on? Well, they have this going on. How about you guys get together? But always basing it in this idea of personal development, personal improvement, bettering the society, bettering the community, because ultimately that's what makes the world a better place.
And I love that. And with everything that you're saying, I strongly believe that you guys are going to achieve that. And I'm actually excited to see what's next, and I'm going to keep my eye more closely on what you guys going on. I want to jump into your spaces next time. Anybody
Absolutely.
else who's listening, please make sure that you go and give Brendan a follow. I put his link in the chat. Also, for anyone who is listening or watching this pre-recording, please go check out Brendan, go check out Via Stoica. All the information to their social media and their website and everything like that is going to be in the description below to wherever you're listening to this on any audio streaming platform, as well as on Twitch, YouTube, and X. Before we get out of here, would you please well, not please, what is your message? What is the message that you hope listeners will take away from this conversation, as well as what do you hope people will take away from their experience through the coaching that you guys offer at Via Stoica?
The message I want people to take away from this conversation is that time is our most valuable asset. It is the only asset that we can never get back. So don't waste it not pursuing something that you want. If you have an idea or a passion that you are interested in, figure out a way to pursue it. Whether that's in a small way, you don't have to quit your job and start the company right away. There's always a small way to do something, to test out an idea. There's always a small way to do it that doesn't involve too much disruption. Figure that out and give it a go. And then when it doesn't work, try it again. And then when that doesn't work, keep doing it again. Because at the end of the day, we don't have enough time to sit here and waste, days and weeks getting ready, preparing, thinking about doing the thing. Just go do the thing. I swear to you, if you just start doing it, the first step forward is the most difficult, but all of them after that come a lot easier. So time is our most valuable asset. It is the only asset we can never get back. So don't waste it.
I fucking love it. I love it. That's the best way to end the podcast. Everyone, thank you so much for coming and kicking it with us in the chat. For everyone that kicked it with us on X, on Twitch, and on YouTube, I truly appreciate the love and support. If you are not following Brendan right now, please go give him a follow. Go check out Via Stoica. Nacho, thank you again. Thank you for the sub. Thank you for the shout outs, everybody. Thank you all who went and gave Brendan a follow. A lot of people were saying that they're already following you and that they went to go follow you in the middle of the conversation. So I love that as well. Brendan, thank you so much, man, for giving me your time, for having interest to even come on here and share your story, as well as the information of what you guys are building and working on. I truly appreciate you for that. And I also appreciate what you're doing. I truly feel like it's something that is needed. It's like you said, we're doing a very, very shitty job of just being there for each other and just communicating in a positive way. I feel like we have so much technology that we're not taking advantage of in a positive way, and we're using it more in a way to make us have more excuses to just separate from each other and be more further apart. And I think like what you're doing is something that's really going to disrupt that and show people that, there's other ways for us to really work on moving forward. We're not alone. There's people willing to help. There's people willing to inform us and coach us like you guys are doing in a positive way. And I just really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, truly, because it's just amazing. Thank you for sharing your story.
Man. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing here. Thank you for having me on the podcast and letting me come on here and share my story with your listeners. I've really enjoyed the conversation, man. And you've got my calendar. You know where to find me. My door is always open to you. So if you want to talk about any sort of business situation, I'm always here to support you and do what I can to help you in those regards. But I really appreciate what you're doing here, man. And thank you so much for the time.
No, thank you, man. And again, also the same as well. If there's anything that I can do, helping anything that you guys got going on in any way, please don't hesitate. My DMs are always open. Let me know, and I'll help in any way that I can, man.
Absolutely. We got you.
So everybody, thank you. This has been another episode of Clocking Out. I love you guys. Stay safe. Peace.